Welcome, everyone. Today, we're going to be talking about the feel-good molecule.
Yeah, today we're talking all about dopamine.
And dopamine is critical to your health, to the addictions you have in your life, your longevity. Phenomenal thing to learn about. Today's the day you're going to hear about dopamine.
As always, this is Doug, the formulator.
And Miss Natural Olympia, Hilary.
This is one that I wanted to talk about.
It is, and I love that because I think that one of the things about our podcast is that we will come up with ideas and topics based on communications that we have with people,
Mhm.
feelings we have, things that we're going through personally in the transitions between, your competing season and just life in general. And I love that this is something that you thought about, did some research on, and that we're talking about it. Because I really think that's what a lot of people like to hear is
Yeah,
like the real life things that
hopefully.
affect them.
Yeah, hopefully. So I think just jumping right in, I'll kind of go into a little bit of my experience and what we've kind of been talking about with me recently. And coming off of competing, I feel like my dopamine gets hit in a great way constantly, right?
Yeah.
In ways like when I have a super great workout, dopamine. Even when my workout's not great, I'm still producing like all of these wonderful chemicals that are making me feel better, right?
Absolutely.
And it's a constant and it's intense. Now, also with that, because my nutrition is right on, when we're in the depths of competing season, um, any adjustments to that, I feel quite heavily. Right. And so I feel like when we're in the heat of competing season, we have a very steady, uh, emotions. All
Yeah.
emotions are pretty steady. And then these dopamine hits come very naturally through natural means all day long.
Right. And it keeps you happy, keeps you motivated. And so, what is dopamine, right? What are we talking about? We're talking about a neurotransmitter. Okay. So a neural brain transmitter. So it's a chemical in the brain that's a messenger that does a lot of things, but it's one of the things is it's your reward system. So it makes the body feel good. Like, oh, hey, this is great. And that's what most people know it as reward and pleasure, right?
Right? It's the
The-
pleasure molecule,
It's a
right? Yeah.
great way to put it. But and it's integral to the brain reward system, which that's really important. And you've got to be able to have your body constantly, reward you for things, and it was meant to be used like when you're in the middle season, right? Like
Right.
you're doing things right, you're eating healthy, you're exercising, then those extra little workouts, those extra little things you do, and it's like a reward because your body's going to another level. But the study of dopamine by the by pharmaceutical companies, by big food, by tobacco companies, has led to where they're using food and drugs to manipulate dopamine so that we're getting that
Mm,
feel good, release. But it's when we do things that aren't healthy, that it's not a true reward for doing something good. And that's where the problem is. And I think that, if great marketing, just terrible morals that has happened. But one thing on dopamine that I just want to mention, because I think most people hear about it,
yeah.
they feel good,
Yeah.
is that you need dopamine. You're like, well, I live a steady lifestyle and I don't put myself in a position to get dopamine release, right? Like you hear of people doing, exciting things, or they go and, put extreme sports, things like that, right? And you're like, well, I don't do that, and so I'm better off. It's not true. Low dopamine is one of the leading causes of conditions like Parkinson's disease, right? It's if you have low dopamine, you actually have depression. So you need to have these rewards. It's like we love to be told that, hey, you're doing great or you look
Right.
great, right? That type of thing. We need that. And we need our brain telling us those things, but because we're doing the right things, not because we're doing the wrong things.
Right. And I love that you hit, of course, you hit food and drugs, right? You hit it from that side. And I'm going to kind of hit it from another side where I'm going to kind of go into the quick hits of dopamine,
Mm,
right? And so I think anyway, so coming out of competing season
right.
where I get a lot of my dopamine from food, right?
Yeah, like the second it's over, like most bodybuilders do, right? They go and have a
Yeah,
lot of
all of a
food,
sudden sugar, that's a
right?
dopamine hit, right? And then of course we lead into, I think a lot of us, and the reason I'm talking about, myself that way is because it leads into the holiday season. And so I think
Mm,
we're all guilty of the holiday dopamines, right?
right.
Because it's different sugars and different parties and shopping. Shopping gives quick dopamine hits.
Average American gains 6 to 8 pounds over the holidays, and it's mainly due to the foods that give you these not false, these dopamine hits that aren't healthy for you. So it's
Right.
not just coming off competition, like you said. I think it's important for people to realize that this is some high majority of the population have a problem with is coming off the holidays, getting their dopamine hits from things that are not a healthy habit.
Right. And I think sometimes what happens too is we feel those hits and we like it. And so we're looking for quicker ways to get high quick. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
And so that's where we all kind of fall into the scrolling, right? And I saw this little thing on the internet that was really cool. It shows, like, okay, quick hit from Instagram and then a crash. And then, ooh, somebody liked my photo, crash.
Mm.
Scrolling, then a crash, new message, crash. So there's all of these, yeah, like quick hits of dopamine. And I don't know, were we meant to experience dopamine in that way?
Yeah, great question. So the the question is, were we meant to have dopamine quick hits, or should it be this constant? And the fact of the matter is, we're supposed to be able to have a little bit of each. But the dopamine hits we're supposed to have is butterfly type dopamine hits,
Mm,
right? It's like, oh, that type thing. And or even smile at, you see a little kid doing something and that, or you see someone giving service, whatever it might be. Those are the quick dopamine hits that we're meant to have. Those quick little boom, you just need that little extra and it's
it's
just
almost
nice,
it's almost like those hits that have meaning behind it,
Yes, great way to
right?
put it. Great way to put it versus the non-meaning. And I love what you were saying that, there's fake dopamine, the ones that we should stay away from, and
Yeah.
that being one of them, right? The scrolling. I think that, and that's one of the things that, and they're looking at the algorithms of social media today with Facebook, Instagram, right? There was a big talk about TikTok and all that, that the algorithms are designed for quick dopamine hits to keep you there,
Right,
right? To keep
which
you
is
engaged.
brilliant if that's your business model,
Yeah,
correct?
absolutely.
Not so brilliant at keeping our minds healthy and our bodies healthy. So some do you want me to go into like it shows fake dopamine and real dopamine? And
Yeah,
I just think
let's talk about the fake
that's
first.
just
Yeah.
kind of a cool way to say it, really.
Okay.
So fake, it goes into binge watching, TV,
Mm.
mindless scrolling, junk food, an abundance of caffeine, like through
So let's
coffee.
talk junk food for a second. So there are specific foods that cause dopamine release more than others in the body, and there's some that actually suppress it.
Okay.
Okay. So the obvious dopamine releasers are sugar, anything with sugar. But now we know that there are specific chemicals like phthalates and these microplastics, red dye, not red, all dyes, a lot of these ingredients that they put in to say they're just fillers, they're just things to help a texture that actually their sole purpose is to release dopamine right in the
Hmm.
body, the things that are in the Oreo cookies, all these types of things, so that you get those hits that you want more and more and more of. And it's this double-edged sword. So when we talk about foods, the processed sugary foods create this false, what do you call it, fake
Hmm.
dopamine. But the things like the really bad fats, like, really fried fat, things like that, you're like, "Well, I do crave more than that sometimes." Truth is that what's happening is it's actually turning off the dopamine, some of these really bad fried fats, just straight fried fats in the body, and it's taking you down, and that's why a lot
Hmm.
of people actually get depressed or they just kinda go down and it brings them down from a high, and that can be addicting in a way too, but it leads to a myriad of diseases. So you don't
Yeah.
want to have that low dopamine.
Yeah. Um, so working without rest, people
Mm.
don't realize that. We've come into contact with a lot of our clients in that capacity, right?
Yeah.
They do feel such a high from being able to work and accomplish, what they're trying to set out to do.
And it can be at any age. I mean, I went through that in my 20s, right? It
Hmm.
was like 16 hours, 18 hours a day, many times like this is just, But it's crazy how we have people, it's not just an age thing. It's
Yeah.
just, and they've got into that, and it can be
I
detrimental.
I didn't know you in your 20s, but I've known you in your 30s, your 40s, and your 50s, and you enjoy work, sir. All decades. Anyways, so there's also unneeded shopping. I am so guilty of that.
What was
I
that?
What I meant to say was no, but honestly, because as Christmas starts rolling around, I get so excited about finding all of the different gifts for everybody in my life, that I start about December, and it goes all through the month. And then I get used to being able to get these quick hits. Stop.
Do you ever see a picture of those boats
We're
coming
gonna
across the ocean with all the big boxes and everything on it, and they make jokes about this is my wife's Amazon order coming, and that's probably true for our case, but yeah, got it.
The second we're done with this, I'm just gonna use some anger.
And the thing is though, that's very, very true. I mean, it's a thing that is joked about the most, right? But it is an absolute dopamine hit, and it can get people into trouble,
Oh yeah. I
right?
mean, yeah, think
Uh,
about that. Now it's not just the dopamine hit that is an issue, but overspending, right?
Absolutely.
And then gossiping, all night gaming.
Well, can we stay with the gossiping thing?
Yeah.
A lot of people don't understand that whining and gossiping is a dopamine hit,
Yeah, that's
right?
so
And
interesting
it's
to
a
me.
habit, and people want that fix. And so they're in crowds, and what they will do is they'll be the one to gossip or to say something, the worst thing that's happened that day from the news or in their life. And you're like, why in the world are they that way? Well, they have this habit. That's how they release dopamine. And it is tough to churn it around to actually only say good things about people and, not gossip, which can create dopamine, but you have to reverse that cycle.
Mm,
And it's really one of the worst um, cycles that you can get in because it is a dopamine release. And that it's like people that drink a lot, like afterwards, like, I'll never drink again. They know,
right.
but it's tough to get out of.
Yeah. Then we have all night gaming, all night phone use, and then what was so interesting on the fake dopamine is procrastinating.
Mm.
That procrastination can also be kind of a dopamine hit.
Huge,
Is that
huge.
wild?
That is wild. And what was interesting, there was a study that was done out of MIT, and what they showed was, why do people create all these goals and commit to things, and the high majority of people don't? Because it's this rebellious, I don't have to dopamine hit.
Yeah.
And it's people get into this thing that they would rather have the hit of dopamine from being a rebel. I don't have to. I don't have to play this game, right? Because the best in the world, athletes, parents, business people, they play games with themselves. So I'm going to accomplish this or else, right? And they have something that they, people call it punishment, but it's kind of a fun thing, right? That they have to do. And a lot of people, well, I can choose not to do that. And that's their dopamine, that rebellion. And so it can be very, very damaging. And we've seen it even in professional sports at a very high level of some people that are right there to break into greatness. And they got a high out of quitting,
Yeah.
yeah, it's amazing.
So those are all the different fake, and I use the word fake kind of loosely because they are still dopamine hits.
They are
It's just
dopamine hits, and they probably should say detrimental dopamine
yeah,
hits,
yeah, but
right?
I do like the term fake and real, meaning like when you're getting those, it's like a dopamine hit and it becomes almost addictive. Where when you're having like a real dopamine hit, it might become addictive, but their health benefits are behind it,
That's
right?
that's it.
So things like catching the sunrise, prayer and meditation.
So I think the sunrise thing is one thing that I have seen in you, you know, when you had the habit of going out and you would set up, by the pool
Hmm.
and be able to do your meditating and your journaling and that at the sunrise, just your being,
Hmm.
after that, because you had that hit. Is so inspiring to me, and you see that with a lot of people, and that's one of the reasons why you should get up with the sunlight, is you automatically get an immediate dopamine hit from that. So I don't think we can overlook that.
I wonder if it I wonder if there's something to this. We should look it up and study it a little bit, but something like what a dopamine hit is versus a dopamine release. Like, doesn't it feel like those are two separate things?
Well,
I
there
mean,
is.
I know they're being released in a hit, but doesn't it feel like they're just different?
There is. There's two that we know about. One's called a dopamine pulse. And the
Hmm.
dopamine pulse is just that. That's what I was talking about, like the butterflies, you know,
Okay.
things like
Hmm.
that. And then um, that's just a pulse that you should get through the day. So a little pump. But then you have actual dopamine release, and that's a release of chemicals that flow through the full body and help provide benefits to the cells, to the mitochondria, right? And so I think that it's important that we do have both, but we keep trying to get more to the real. So
Yeah.
sunlight, you mentioned,
So we catching the sunrise, prayer and meditation.
huge. And look at the world's getting us to a place where we don't do that like we should. In
Interesting.
other words,
Good
just
point.
create silence so
Mhm.
that you can, be present and meditate. And I don't know, is grounding on there? Because a lot of times that's it too.
So it'll get there. Not exactly grounding, but similar. And then, on the one side it said drinking coffee is a fake dopamine, where this says healthy teas, drinking healthy teas.
So what's the separation there? The separation really comes down to the synthetic side of
Mm,
anything, even caffeines, right? Because the studies of green tea, one of
right.
the longest studies ever performed, because we have the research from the Chinese, right, from hundreds, if not thousands of years ago, and they show that actually that it was a dopamine calming, benefit and the longevity benefit. Well, that's caffeine. It's the synthetic. So it all comes back to synthetic and processed, causing the difference between fake and real.
Okay. Walks, like walks with friends, or and we've noticed that together when we do walks, how much better we feel. Exercise. So your weight training and or cardio sessions separate from walking,
And I think that that one is such a huge, um, real dopamine hit. And I know a lot of people maybe spend a little too much time. We're really big on getting in and getting out, but they're like, wait, you spend an hour and a half in the gym a day. That's not getting in and getting out. But as we'd mentioned in a previous podcast, that you should be spending an hour at least working out, right? And some people that it's their main profession have to spend longer. But the exercise part of it is you have a dopamine release from the exercise, and dopamine, because it's a neurotransmitter, also releases the chemicals in the body that, number one, fuel the cells in the muscle, but also help recuperate. So you're
Mm,
actually creating longevity chemicals, we call them mitokines, within the muscle, a lot being stimulated from dopamine.
I love that. I love the concept of dopamine being this wonderful thing that we're supposed to have and we're supposed to get, and this thing that we abuse because it's so interchangeable with almost every part of life,
In every part of
right?
life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
reading, and you don't really consider that much, do you?
No, you don't, and I think it's overlooked, right? It's becoming a lost art. We just were talking to some people the other day and about it, and one of our clients, and I said, hey, there's great new, not even new, but great research showing that if you listen to a book at the same time you're reading, you actually retain it more, and there's a better dopamine response. And the lady used to teach special ed, and she was like mesmerized, and she just said, hey, do you know that that's what we taught as to actually overcome a lot of the
Really?
the problems of
Yeah.
special needs children, and that because it made the nerves fire stronger and it created more pathways, which make a lot of sense.
Wow.
For the neurotransmitters to work, you have to have the pathway, and so things like reading and that, really good.
Really good. Rest, of course. Deep breathing. Doug is a big fan of. There's a lot of times throughout the day that I'm asked, are you breathing? Or told, take a breath. Right.
Yeah, I mean, look at that adage, right? Take a breath. Well, it's true because of the dopamine. Just it's a lot of people realize that dopamine that gives you that energy and that. No, really, it's a neurotransmitter that can help reset, and you get that release, and it's a feel good molecule. Okay, It's okay. You know, it's not that bad.
Yeah. And then it goes into cooking a healthy meal or music, art, creativity. So I, I don't know. I love the concept of these wonderful dopamine releases that we're supposed to have, and also kind of getting ourselves in check a little bit. Are we getting too many of these quick releases that aren't having any, you know, underneath healthy benefits for us,
Mhm.
you know? Um, so I like the concept of this. What about, do you think it's healthy, or do you think it's important to do like a dopamine detox?
Yeah. And there's a great book, The Dopamine Detox. And the answer is yes, because it's like everything in life that if you get too much of it consistently, and I say everything, a lot of things in life, then your body's ability to respond becomes lessened.
Mhm.
There's a caveat to that. So let me explain. You're not supposed to get to a point where your dopamine release is becomes less and it takes more and more stimulation to get it.
Okay.
Okay.
You're not supposed
You're
to.
not supposed to get to that point. Like caffeine, synthetic caffeine, you get to a point you have to take so much that finally you know you need to go off of it for a while,
Yeah.
right? Because the adrenals are shot. That doesn't happen with the natural forms of caffeine. So with dopamine, if you get the real from your thing hits of dopamine, really you don't have to go off and do a dopamine detox. But if you're the synthetic, like the caffeines, then you absolutely need to do it because it takes more and more stimulation from a fake source of dopamine release to achieve that dopamine neurotransmitter to be activated. And that's where it comes to, there was a great study, and I get reminded of it a lot because a lot of people think I do extreme stuff or used to do extreme stuff, and like, oh, that's just you're seeking that dopamine release type thing. And for some people that is true, but the truth of the matter is you should try to work to eliminate those fake dopamine hits. But if they're a part of your life, and even if you are going to eliminate them or try to, then you should do a dopamine detox and basically completely go off of anything fake for a period of time and let your body reset. And
Yeah,
just,
it's
yeah,
just like the concept of a 24, 48, or 72-hour fast, you know.
absolutely. And pick any one of those things. So, thinking of your list, you have to remind me, um, let's go through it. Like we're talking about the one thing that might be new for people, talking about the whining and the complaining and that type thing.
Gossiping.
You have to 100% say for the next 48, 72 hours, I'm absolutely just going to think of the good in every situation. And that if it is a bad situation or gossip, you don't say it. And and that can be really tough for people, right? And the same holds true with in the processed foods. Alcohol, I don't think we mentioned, is a
Oh, we
huge
didn't mention
dopamine.
alcohol. Wow.
Huge, huge,
Huge.
huge.
Yeah, and in
Mm.
another thing that I read, it did talk about addiction with alcohol
Mhm.
and drugs, and how, it creates, when you are drinking, or you are high or whatever, and you are feeling that, and you're having that dopamine release, and you just feel so good, then your body just kind of craves it again once you're
Absolutely.
sober and feeling better, right?
Right. And it depletes, and processed food does this. Over the counter drugs do this. Alcohol does this. Basically, all the fake
Right.
dopamine, they deplete nutrients in your body that your body needs in order for dopamine to be
Oh,
created, right? It's a neurotransmitter, so it has to be created from nutrients. So, your probiotics, your friendly bacteria in the body, which again, alcohol, prescription drugs, and all those ruin, right? They deplete. You need probiotics in the gut to send the signal through what's called the vagus nerve
yeah.
to release dopamine.
That's something that we should have started with when we were having this discussion via text yesterday about dopamine. That, one of your first things back was talking about, dopamine is made in the gut. mm, You
Oh,
know,
yeah. 50% of all the dopamine made in the body is made in the gut and transported 90% of all the serotonin. So you have to get your probiotic levels, friendly bacteria, fermented foods under control to do that. Vitamin D is essential for dopamine.
okay.
Glutathione is why we're so big on glutathione. We've seen so many people's lives change by just adding glutathione into their diet, the little orange
Right.
wafer, and they not knowing why. And I think a lot of it is to help with the dopamine reset.
Mm-hmm.
And then certain amino acids,
Oh,
which is interesting because that means it's not a protein like a chicken or beans. It's when that protein is broken all the way down to individual amino acids like tyrosine.
mm-hmm.
And so if that process doesn't happen, we don't get the nutrients to the brain. So we have to have the nutrients that make um, dopamine and make sure they're present. We have to try to get rid of the fake dopamine hits in our life by doing, you said it best, a detox or a
Fast, right?
a fast.
Yeah.
And then add some of the real ones, and it actually creates a balance. So yes, you get the dopamine highs and the great things, but it creates a balance. And how you explained about how you are in the heat of prep, it's tough, but you're a lot of times you're happiest because things are going smooth and you get nice dopamine hits and you don't have the crash of the fake dopamines.
Right. Right. We're gonna get back to that.
That's awesome.
And when we were talking about this, you did say just how detrimental, I don't know if we mentioned it, just how detrimental it is to get your dopamine hits from junk food
Mm,
and from food in general. Like, not a
great,
healthy meal, but
great American food fraud. It's real,
yeah.
and we spent a whole podcast and I talk about it all the time. We talked about it in Dallas to that group and everything, is that processed foods have the chemicals in them to make you addicted and to affect your ghrelin and leptin levels for craving food.
Mm-hmm.
But what we don't talk about enough is it also affects your dopamine levels, that not only do you crave more just for the craving sense that is ghrelin and leptin regulated in the body, but from the reward system in the brain saying, give me more, give me more. And you got both of those fighting.
Wow,
That's why it's
that's
so hard to get
huge.
away from processed foods.
Yeah.
And why, again, I think let's kind of maybe end with the fact that the recommendation on this thing is to do a fast, and you should do a 24, 48, or 72-hour fast. Watch the notes of this. You can download a free app called the Healthy Habits Tracker and click the fast. You order a fasting kit, which is all the nutrients to help the fast work better. But the recommendation from this podcast, I just love what you said, is not only do the fast like we think about, right, food, but do the fast from those fake dopamine hits at the same time. What a
Yeah.
great thing.
No, that'd be great. And even if you don't do them at the same time, I think it'd be great for all of us to feel, some of the sacrifice that comes from not having those quick dopamine hits for a time and just see if we feel better. Because I know that mentally I haven't felt my greatest in the last, 3 or 4 weeks. And I think, I've just been too used to relying on these quick highs,
Yeah, the fake dopamine
the fake
hits.
dopamine. So, anyways,
I love that. I love that. I think that's great for all of us. And the thing about being real and raw with this is, you go through it many times at the end of the season and you're like, I'm going to jump back on after a few days or a week, or I'm just going to take these few weeks. And it's always this battle that you go through. And it's this mental battle, it's this physical battle to get back on. And it's this fight against leptin, this fight against dopamine, and it's real. And there's a lot of people that have been in this not just a year at a time and then off the season, and we see how hard it is, but we're talking about decades and that. And so
you'd get it by now.
I think we all would. We all do it, right? We all do it. You just have it in a very specific cycle, and so we can talk about it, but we all do it. We all do it. And we have to get back on the bandwagon. But for those that have had some of these fake dopamine habits for years and decades, it does take a true fast. It takes, and here is the plan to get off of it, right? It's the same thing, Alcoholics Anonymous. There has to be a system and a plan. So create your plan. Get away from the fake dopamine hits. Start getting to where you love the true dopamine release that gives you value to your life, that promotes health.
It
And
gives you
longevity.
value and the things that are a little bit harder, and take advantage of those times when you're willing to go, you know what? I want to run a 5K. You know what? I want to enter this competition. I want to write this book. I
Mm,
want to write in my journal. The things that are a little bit harder, but yet you feel that burn and that desire, I think that is our true selves trying to get us to that healthier state and find the dopamine that lasts.
Love that. You want to go 300 miles an hour. You want to do things.
I don't want to go 300. He wants to go 300.
Hey,
You do want to run a 10K.
I do want to run a 10K. Okay. We'll start with 5.
Okay.
All right. As always, this is Miss Natural Olympia Hilary.
It's Doug the Formulator.
Take care.
See ya.
Dopamine out.
Dopamine out.